Melissa Ann Howard was a 33-year-old single mother living in Crestview, Florida, doing her best to build a stable life for her young daughter. A registered nurse, Melissa was known for her kindness, her dedication to her patients, and above all, her deep devotion to her little girl. After a difficult divorce and a lengthy custody battle, she had finally secured primary custody and was working hard to provide a sense of normalcy. To many, she seemed to be moving forward with hope. But underneath her determination, there were concerns, worries about the past, and fears she never voiced aloud. On the evening of January 6, 2006, those fears became reality. That night, Melissa was supposed to pick up her daughter from her relative's house. When she didn't arrive, calls went unanswered. Eventually, a concerned family member went to her house. What they found inside would shake the community to its core. Melissa was lying face down in a pool of blood in her living room. Her throat had been viciously slashed. Nothing had been stolen, and there were no signs of forced entry. Whoever had killed her had either been let in or already had a way inside. The investigation began immediately, but the trail was cold from the start. Melissa had no known enemies, no lovers with jealous motives, and no obvious reason for someone to want her dead. But detectives quickly learned that her past wasn't as quiet as it seemed. Her ex-husband had once made threats during the custody dispute, and she had expressed concerns about a man named David Russell Holbrook Jr., someone she had distanced herself from in the months leading up to her death. Holbrook had a criminal record and a history of volatile behavior. He lived locally and had known Melissa through mutual acquaintances. Still, with no physical evidence tying him to the crime, the case stalled. The years dragged on. That break finally came a decade later, in 2016. Advances in DNA technology allowed investigators to retest evidence that had been preserved from the crime scene. One critical item, a sweatshirt Melissa had been wearing, was sent to the state lab for renewed testing. This time, forensic analysts found partial DNA that wasn't hers. It was a match to David Holbrook. Investigators re-examined his alibi from that night and discovered inconsistencies. He had claimed to have been shopping at Walmart, but there was no security footage or receipts to support his claim. In fact, cell phone tower data placed him near Melissa's house around the time of her death. Police brought Holbrook in for questioning. At first, he denied everything. But when confronted with the DNA evidence, his story changed. He admitted to having been at Melissa's home, but claimed it had been a consensual visit and that someone else must have killed her after he left. Investigators didn't buy it. They had built a timeline, and Holbrook was the only person who had both access and a motive. With the DNA evidence as their anchor, they charged him with first-degree murder. The trial took place in 2019. Prosecutors painted a chilling picture of a man who had killed in a fit of rage, someone who couldn't handle rejection or boundaries. They argued that Holbrook had come to Melissa's house that night angry and unstable. She likely let him in, not expecting violence, and paid for that trust with her life. Forensic experts testified about the DNA found on her clothing, and investigators outlined the collapse of Holbrook's alibi. His defense team tried to cast doubt on the timeline and suggested the DNA might have been from a prior, innocent encounter, but the jury wasn't convinced. After just 5 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict: guilty. Holbrook was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Melissa Ann Howard's case remains one of the most haunting examples of a cold case solved through patience, forensic science, and the determination of loved ones who never gave up.